I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Hey, you guys, and welcome back to the News du Jour. I have some exciting news. So we now have 90 different countries listening to this podcast, which just blows my mind. When I started this podcast, I honestly never expected to have anyone outside of like the US, but maybe Canada or the UK listening to this podcast. So it just blows my mind. 90 countries. That is up from the last time I counted, which was 67. So we are growing super fast after my maternity leave. And I'm just so excited to continue expanding this community. And I so appreciate all of our international listeners. And I hope that you guys will help us keep an ear to the ground in what's going on in the world outside of the US. Please message me on any important stories that we are missing. I also wanted to tell you guys that, in case you didn't already know, we are ranked in the Apple Podcast charts, not just in the US top 100, but now in the top 100 in Canada, as well as the top 150 in Norway. We're 120 or so in Norway as well, which is crazy because English isn't even one of the primary languages there. So thank you everyone for listening. I so appreciate you, and keep spreading the word. I also wanted to note here at the top that there's more Kanye drama, but I'm not going to be going over it today. So I'm just going to wait a minute until there's more, because I'm sure there will be more over the weekend, and I'd rather you guys have it all in one place, kind of. Let's just say Hailey Bieber has entered the chat, so things are getting crazy. Also, let me know on social if you guys are enjoying this Kanye deep dive, or if it's, not what you come here for. I know I always touch on celebrities, but are we going too deep into it? Let me know. Okay, but for our first story today, we are going over Biden pardoning thousands of convicted weed-related crimes. Now, Biden only has the ability to clear people on the federal level. So I wanted to make that clear before we jump in, as well as the District of Columbia, apparently. But thousands of prisoners, approaching about 10,000 probably, are going to be freed due to this new law. Now, this will only pardon people convicted on possession charges, so not growing weed or distributing the drug. But the administration is also looking to potentially remove weed as a Schedule I drug, meaning that it would no longer be in the same category as drugs like heroin and LSD. Biden is really encouraging states to consider doing the same, as marijuana is just becoming more and more mainstream and legalized throughout the country. As statistics show, it is not really a dangerous drug. It's, just about the same as alcohol in terms of levels of danger. There are still, though, people serving lengthy sentences, even life sentences, for possession, which is nuts. We know putting someone in prison makes them more likely to be violent later on in life and disrupts a ton of lives in the process, with ripple effects through communities. So we really have to ask ourselves, when is it worth it? And on that note, I wanted to go ahead and jump into a different story, but also drug related. There was a ton of fentanyl found in New Jersey. So speaking of really horrible, violent, bad drugs, a huge drug bust went down in New Jersey this past week, Rainbow fentanyl was found in a Lego box. You guys, yes, Legos, like the kid toy. Inside, with all the Lego blocks, was a giant Ziploc full of pills. It almost looked like candy, you guys, like Pez or something. 15,000 of them, the largest seizure ever in New York City. Part of why I wanted to cover this story today, though, is because fentanyl is actually becoming a huge problem in America, you guys. It is a very serious drug, and even a small trace amount can kill you. In fact, this is something that has killed many people when it's been mixed into other drugs bought off the street. According to New York's special narcotics prosecutor, 80% of overdose deaths are now related to fentanyl. Just one of those tiny candy-colored pills could kill you. According to Dr. Mikhail Varshavsky for CBS News, quote, "These medications are incredibly potent, 50 times more potent than heroin and 100 times more potent than morphine," end quote. There is a movement on TikTok underway to educate people on the dangers of fentanyl because honestly, most people just don't know. And I didn't know. And I, of course, took to the internet to fact check everything I was learning. And here's what I found out. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid, meaning that it was created in a lab. Most fentanyl is currently produced in China and brought to the US. It was designed as a drug to help treat people who were allergic to other opioids or couldn't, for some reason, have morphine or something like that. Approximately 56,516 people died in 2020 from fentanyl or similar synthetic non-methadone opioids. That means approximately 154 people dying a day of this type of drug. 154 people a day in 2020, and it has gone up since then, you guys. And many of these people are young people who are just dabbling in drugs like cocaine or oxy, maybe even Adderall, and not knowing that their purchase was laced with trace amounts of fentanyl that were also enough to kill them pretty much immediately. I wanted to help spread the word about this drug because its effects are just so tragic and leaving people heartbroken all across the country and taking out bright lights. So before you buy drugs off the street, just think, is this worth it? Because fentanyl, if it's in there at all, can kill you in an instant. So be very careful, you guys. Obviously, I would say don't buy anything off the street. If you need to do some weed, get a weed card. Here in Oklahoma, that's legal at least. And stay away from drugs, kids. So next up, I wanted to cover the oil ping pong situation. This will just be a quick mini story, but OPEC, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, has announced that they will be lowering the supply of oil that they are producing. So what does this mean? It's a maneuver that is set to keep prices high internationally. It's seen as a move by Saudi Arabia to kind of give the finger to Biden and kind of shit on his plans to move away from Russian oil. This happened on Tuesday. So, in response, Biden kind of gave them the finger right back, announcing that he would release barrels of oil from our reserves to help offset what OPEC is doing. Woof. So, it's kind of this game of ping pong, you guys. Will this move by Biden backfire? Will it help us at the pump? We can only wait and see. And then next up for today, I wanted to give you guys a content warning before we dive into this story. This story involves the death of young children. We are going to be covering a mass shooting in Thailand. In a country that, unlike the US, does not have a lot of mass shootings, this event was particularly horrific. A 34-year-old former police officer in northeast Thailand went into a daycare with a handgun and a knife and proceeded to kill 38 people, including himself. 20 of those victims were, in fact, young children. One victim was only 2 years old, and another was a teacher who was 8 months pregnant. It has since been discovered that this man had been fired from the police force after being caught with meth, a drug that is unfortunately very prevalent in Thailand. Wow, this episode ended up being all about drugs. Didn't intend for that. Leadership there, though, believes that he attacked the daycare because daycare is actually free in Thailand, provided by the government, which he blamed for him losing his job. Needless to say, this attack was completely unexpected and has shaken up this nation. Our hearts go out to all of the families who lost a loved one in this horrific event and to the survivors who will have such an uphill battle in healing from this tragedy. And lastly for today, I just wanted to touch on Biden's visit to Florida, which has definitely been under a microscope. So there's been just a couple interesting moments from that visit. So let's go over them. Biden and a hot mic. I'm pretty sure this is not the first or the second. I think this is the third time that he has been caught with a hot mic. And if you don't know what that is, a hot mic is where you think the mic is off, but it's actually on and you say something untoward. So President Biden was just chatting with the mayor of a town in Florida, and the two were kind of yucking it up. And long story short, he dropped an F-bomb. I believe what he said was, nobody fucks with a Biden, which is just like funny out of context. I really want to know what they were talking about. But the mayor said that it was just two guys having a friendly conversation and that it wasn't directed at anyone. So anyway, that happened. And the next was a photo that is being passed around. And, you know, the photo, they say a picture can say 1,000 words, but the photo shows President Biden kind of yucking it up with some residents in Florida, and they seem to be bonding and having a good time and smiling. And Ron DeSantis is there, but just kind of like awkwardly standing by himself, just looking off and kind of blurred out in the photo. And it just seems like he's not engaging with anyone. And, you know, my opinion is just that you can capture an off moment. I know from social media, like, you know, it's just, you can pick one moment and try and say it represents what was going on in a scene, and it can be absolutely not what was going on at all. So I feel like the picture doesn't really say that much, because 3 seconds beforehand, Ron could have been the ones who introduced those people. Who knows? But that picture is being circulated from Biden's trip. So I wanted to make you guys aware of it in case you see it. And then also, just I wanted to reiterate, I had said this in a previous episode this week, but Ron DeSantis and President Biden, although they are extreme political rivals, they have been getting along really well and have really put things aside for the betterment of the people of the state of Florida. And thank God, because we really need to come together right now more than ever, because we're more polarized than ever. So it's nice to see people cooperating when it really matters, right? Anyway, that's where I will leave you guys for the week. That is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, Everyone is ignorant, only on different subjects. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider becoming a patron of our podcast. For $7.99 a month, you can unlock tons of perks like breaking news text messages so that you're never out of the loop. Tons of bonus episodes are already up there ready for you to binge, and a discussion board full of networking opportunities and much more. Go to www.patreon.com/sugarfree media today to become a patron. This is the best way to support our show. Our patrons make News du Jour possible. But a couple other ways to support our podcast are rate and review on whatever podcast platform you use to listen, share on your social media, you have influence, tell your friends, family, and colleagues that you love News du Jour and why you listen. You can also follow us on social media under sugarfreemedia.co on Instagram, just Sugarfree Media, all one word, on TikTok, and sugarfree_media on Twitter. We also have a weekend newsletter called Dreamers Digest that's full of dreamy content recommendations for your weekend and a life update from yours truly. Sign up today on our website, www.sugarfreemedia.co. Our music is by Joey Lavoie and Nicholas Foster. Our cover art is by Hannah Pierce Photography. Our Sugar Free Media logo is by Catherine Jezik Designs. Any twinkling or little footsteps you might hear in the background are by my dog, Rhett. He's a rescue pup and always records with me. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
Broadcasting from